5 cases, years of evidence, 0 answers. We are counting down 5 unsolved American mysteries where every lead, every theory, every search has fallen short. An abandoned vehicle in a frozen mountain wilderness with no explanation for how it got there. A desperate phone call that suddenly cuts to silence. 5 children who vanished after a Christmas Eve fire and may never have been in the house at all. And the final mystery is not simply about what happened. It is about whether a family spent the rest of their lives searching for children who may have still been alive. This video discusses real disappearances, deaths, and unresolved investigations. Some details may be disturbing. The information presented is based on publicly available reports, documented investigations, historical records, and witness statements. Competing theories are included for discussion, but speculation must not be presented as established fact. In the 5th place, the Plumas National Forest in California became the stage for one of the most baffling cases in American history. On February 24, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, Gary Mathias, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jack Hewitt, attended a college basketball game in Chico. They never made it back home alive. 4 days later, Madruga's 1969 Mercury Montego was found abandoned on a remote, snow-packed mountain road at an elevation of 4,400 feet, far off their expected route. The vehicle itself was fully operational and showed no mechanical issues. It had a quarter tank of fuel, the doors were unlocked, and the tires were intact. There was no damage, yet the men walked away into a severe mountain winter storm. Only 4 sets of distinct footprints were found leading away from the abandoned car. In June, searchers located a remote Forest Service trailer 20 miles away. Inside, Ted Weiher's emaciated body lay, wrapped carefully in 8 thick blankets. The autopsy confirmed he survived between 8 and 13 weeks, ultimately dying of starvation and hypothermia. Curiously, a massive cache of non-perishable food, water, a propane heater, and fuel remained completely untouched inside the trailer. The skeletal remains of Madruga, Sterling, and Hewitt were eventually recovered in the surrounding woods, showing signs of animal scavenging. Gary Mathias's shoes were found abandoned inside the trailer, but his body was never located. All 5 men lived with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions, including Mathias's schizophrenia, which required regular medication. Investigators remained paralyzed by the central contradiction. Why would men freeze and starve to death in a shelter stocked with the very food and heat that could have saved their lives? In the 4th place, a midnight phone call in rural Minnesota ended with a sudden exclamation that still echoes for investigators. On May 14, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was driving home to Marshall after celebrating the end of the college semester when he steered his Chevrolet Lumina into a sharp roadside ditch. Unharmed, he called his parents at 2:05 in the morning, explaining that his car was stuck and asking them to pick him up. He told them he was near the town of Lynn and could see the lights of the town nearby. He decided to walk toward those lights while keeping his father on the phone. For 47 minutes, they spoke as Brandon walked along gravel roads, describing the gravel under his feet in the night air. Then, at 3:10 in the morning, Brandon suddenly yelled, "Oh, shit!" and the line went dead. His parents rushed to find him, but they were searching in the wrong place. Although Brandon was convinced he was near Lind, subpoenaed cell phone tower records later revealed a massive geographical discrepancy. His phone was actually pinging off a tower 25 miles away, near the small town of Taunton. When police located his abandoned Chevrolet Lumina the next morning, it was indeed sitting in a ditch on Lincoln Lyon Road near Taunton, with the keys missing and the doors wide open. Despite massive ground searches, aerial sweeps, and canine teams combing a 10-square-mile grid, searchers found no other trace of Brandon. Tracking dogs eventually followed his scent to the banks of the nearby Yellow Medicine River, leading authorities to suspect he might have fallen into the fast-flowing water and drowned in the darkness. Yet, extensive searches of the riverbed and downstream banks yielded no clothing, footprints, or remains. Brandon Swanson simply vanished into the Minnesota prairie, leaving behind only a silent cell phone signal and a final, unexplained exclamation. In the third place, a remote forest road in the Sans Bois Mountains of Oklahoma became the final destination for a family seeking a fresh start. On October 8, 2009, Bobby Jameson, his wife Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison drove into the rugged hills to look at a 40-acre plot of land. They never returned. 8 days later, hunters discovered their 1999 Chevrolet pickup truck abandoned on a gravel path, locked and undisturbed. Inside the vehicle, investigators found a series of baffling contradictions. The family's small dog was locked in the cabin, severely dehydrated, but still alive after more than a week without sustenance. Under the front seat sat $32,000 in cash, along with the family's wallets, identification cards, warm coats, and GPS unit. There were no signs of a struggle, no traces of blood, and no indications of forced entry. It was as if the Jamesons had simply stepped out for a moment and vanished. The investigation took a stranger turn when police reviewed security footage from the family's home recorded the morning of their departure. The video showed Bobby and Sherilyn moving in a silent, trance-like state, loading the truck over several hours without speaking to one another. Local search efforts across the rugged terrain yielded no clues until November 2013, when hunters stumbled upon skeletal remains just 3 miles from the abandoned truck. Forensic testing confirmed the bones belonged to the Jameson family. The bodies were found lying face down, side by side in a neat row. Because of the extreme decomposition of the skeletal remains, the medical examiner could not determine a definitive cause of death, leaving open theories ranging from murder-suicide and drug involvement to hypothermia. The physical evidence provides no clear path. Investigators remain left with the central puzzle of why a family would abandon their vehicle, their life savings, and their beloved pet, only to walk together into the quiet mountain woods to die. In second place, a rain-slicked runway in Seattle and the roar of a Boeing 727 engine began one of the most audacious crimes in aviation history. On November 24, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper boarded a short flight from Portland to Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a flight attendant a note claiming he possessed a bomb in his briefcase. His demands were clear: $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 military-grade parachutes. Once the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper exchanged the 36 passengers for the cash and survival gear, ordering the crew to fly toward Reno, Nevada at a low altitude with the landing gear down. Somewhere over the dense forests of southwestern Washington, during a blinding rainstorm, Cooper lowered the plane's aft stairs and leapt into the freezing darkness. He was never seen again. Despite a massive, decades-long FBI investigation codenamed Norjack, authorities found no body, no parachute canopy, and no clothing. The only physical items linking the hijacker to the crime were a black clip-on tie left on seat 18E and a small portion of the cash discovered years later. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy digging in the sand at Tina Bar, a beach along the Columbia River, uncovered 3 rotting packets of the $20 bills totaling $5,800. The serial numbers matched the ransom money, but the location of the bills only deepened the mystery. If Cooper perished during his jump, the wilderness should have eventually yielded his remains or the rest of the fortune. If he survived, he managed to slip away into the night without leaving a single trace. After 45 years of tracking thousands of leads, the FBI officially suspended the active investigation in 2016. And finally, in first place on Christmas Eve 1945, a devastating house fire in Fayetteville, West Virginia, left behind an agonizing mystery that would haunt a family for the rest of their lives. George and Jenny Sauter, along with 4 of their children, escaped the roaring blaze. 5 children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty were trapped upstairs. But when the fire subsided, the expected tragedy turned into a bizarre puzzle. A thorough search of the ash yielded 0 skeletal remains, dental fragments, or biological trace of the 5 missing children. State fire marshals claimed the heat of the fire cremated the bodies, yet bone experts refuted this, noting that a typical house fire cannot burn hot enough or long enough to completely obliterate human skeletons. In the days surrounding the fire, a series of deliberate acts came to light. The family's telephone line was cut. A ladder usually kept against the house was found moved to a nearby embankment. George Sauter tried to use his 2 work trucks to drive closer to the upstairs windows, but both vehicles mysteriously failed to start, despite functioning perfectly the day before. Suspicion turned toward kidnapping, fueled by an incident months earlier when a stranger warned George that his house would go up in smoke due to his outspoken criticism of Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. For decades, the Sauters refused to believe their children perished, erecting a massive billboard along Route 19 featuring the children's faces and offering a large reward. The mystery deepened in 1968 when Jenny received a letter postmarked from Kentucky containing a photograph of a young man bearing a striking resemblance to Louis Sauter with a cryptic note on the back. No law enforcement agency could trace the sender. With no physical remains ever recovered from the ashes, the fate of the 5 Sauter children remains entirely unresolved. Subscribe to our channel for more investigations into history's most perplexing cases. Across all 5 of these cases, a haunting pattern emerges. Investigators are left with a wealth of physical evidence: a parked car with a quarter tank of gas, a silent cell phone signal, a neat stack of cash left under a truck seat, or the ashes of a destroyed home. Yet none of these tangible clues lead to a definitive resolution. The true tragedy of an unsolved mystery lies not just in the suddenness of the loss, but in the permanent silence that follows. For the families of the Yuba County 5, Brandon Swanson, the Jamesons, and the Sauter children, the passage of years does not bring healing. Instead, it solidifies the agonizing weight of the unknown. These relatives are forced to live in a state of suspended grief where every potential lead eventually ends in frustration, and every plausible explanation fails to account for the physical reality left behind. In each instance, science and technology reached their limits. Search dogs lost scents at the water's edge. Cell towers provided contradictory coordinates, and fire investigations failed to yield expected biological trace. These cases stand as a sobering reminder of how easily the physical world can swallow human lives, leaving behind nothing but questions. At its core, the human mind craves closure, a logical sequence of cause and effect that explains why people disappear. But these mysteries offer no such comfort. They exist in the frustrating space between what can be documented and what can be proven. As decades pass, the witnesses age, the physical evidence degrades, and the hope for definitive answers slowly slips away. The enduring enigma of these cases lies in that very gap. Investigators can trace the coordinates of a cell phone or catalog the untouched cans of food in a forest shelter, but they cannot map the final decisions of those who vanished. These quiet locations, the high snows of Plumas National Forest, the vast prairies of Minnesota, and the rugged hills of Oklahoma silently hold the answers, keeping their secrets locked away. Every year, thousands of individuals vanish across the United States, leaving behind families, investigators, and a trail of incomplete evidence. In most cases, time and technology eventually provide answers. A recovered vehicle, a sudden confession, or a modern forensic breakthrough eventually solves the puzzle. But some cases resist every effort, remaining completely insulated from resolution despite decades of active inquiry. These are the stories that defy logical explanation, where every plausible theory is countered by a piece of conflicting physical reality. When examining these mysteries, investigators often confront a specific kind of frustration. Instead of a total void, they find an abundance of clues that lead in entirely opposite directions. A pristine car abandoned in the snow with plenty of fuel, a final frantic phone call ending in a single exclamation, or a family truck containing a large amount of cash. These details do not clarify what occurred. Instead, they intensify the silence. The files remain open because the facts themselves refuse to fit together, despite years of active investigation. The true weight of these unresolved events falls upon the families left behind, forced to exist in a permanent state of suspended grief. For these relatives, the passage of decades offers no comfort, only the agonizing reality of living without certainty. The physical world simply swallowed their loved ones, leaving only empty coordinates, silent phone records, and questions that grow heavier with each passing year. As search teams trace these final movements, they find that science and traditional search methods eventually reach their absolute limit. 5 of America's most haunting unsolved cases represent the precise boundary where documented facts end and the unexplained begins. Through documented timelines, recovered physical evidence, and the enduring gaps in each record, these cases continue to challenge everything known about how people disappear, leaving behind puzzles that modern science cannot answer. Across all 5 cases, the pattern reveals that the deepest mystery is not a lack of evidence, but the contradictions within it. These investigations prove that some truths remain entirely out of reach, leaving families to carry the weight of perpetual uncertainty. They remind us that behind every unsolved file is a devastating human cost. Subscribe for more deep dive investigations.